and sometimes lack the candor and the frankness that allow us to get deep into the real issues behind the rhetoric. But today, I will be very honest and say I was refreshed by the degree of candor we heard from some of our keynote speakers. And in particular, I was struck by the words of the current Secretary General of the OSCE, who said, and I'm just looking at my own notes here, 50 years of OSCE work is in danger of being undone. Talk without listening and engaging is never enough. And he said, we need honest discussion about what has gone wrong over 50 years. So without being the journalist who always looks at the glass half empty rather than half full, I do want us to be as candid as possible in this discussion. And I'm going to start with you, Minister Valtonen. We can all, I think, acknowledge and accept that after 50 years, there is a problem for the OSCE. There is a fundamental problem that the spirit of Helsinki is not being upheld, and there appears to be a lack of respect for those important principles which underpin the Helsinki Final Act. How much do you believe there is a crisis facing the spirit of Helsinki today?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the very important question. Well, first of all, I would start off with my personal opinion, which is that at the end of the day, everything you measure is at the level of the people. So organizations come and go, and if the organization doesn't fulfill its purpose anymore for the benefit of the people, then why uphold it? I'm not saying this were the case for the OSCE. The OSCE is not just upholding the principles, but also carrying out valuable tasks all over, which we can talk about later. But I want to highlight a very important thing as well, and something we really need to, well, acknowledge is that, first of all, in the past 50 years, it is not the case that the rules-based order or the Helsinki Principles or the UN Charter would have been shattered. On the very contrary, actually in the past 50 years, the world has become so much freer for so many people, not all of them unfortunately. There is war waging in Ukraine, but at least Ukrainians now have the possibility to really fight for their strong independence and democracy, which they didn't have 50 years ago. They were part of the oppressed, or in the oppressed regime.
No question. I mean, if you don't mind me keeping it sort of snappy and relatively brief, I totally get that. But if we are talking about an arc or a trajectory, one could say that, you know, after 1975, there was an astounding success of spreading sort of the Helsinki Principles, which undermined and then saw the collapse of the Soviet communist system. And through the period around 1989, through the 90s, into the early 2000s, one could argue that the Helsinki spirit was not just alive and well, but was really meaningful. But everybody we've heard from in the keynotes has acknowledged that profound things have happened since then, which seem to take that arc in a more negative direction. And obviously, you know, February of 2022 represents a huge turning point. So I think we have to be realistic and talk about where we are now and accept, do we not, that in recent years things have gone badly wrong.
The war that Russia is waging against Ukraine is dead wrong. No question about it. But we should not take collective responsibility for somebody's wrong actions, because the Helsinki Principles are fine and well. The Helsinki spirit is actually, you know, you can sense it in so many capitals in the European neighborhood, in countries who perhaps are not yet in the European Union or in NATO, or perhaps don't even want to be, but they want to be genuine democracies. Their people want that. That's the Helsinki spirit, and it's alive and kicking. And if there's one country or perhaps another aiding with a full-scale invasion, then it's their fault. I think it's extremely important that we are blunt and honest about who has the responsibility, and also don't forget about the accountability for all what is happening. Because it's been so many years, so many decades that the narrative went that, you know, the West did all, and this, say, NATO came too close to Russia. But NATO never threatened Russia. And, well, this is a little bit beyond besides the point, but what I'm saying is, yes, we have to ponder what has happened, what we need to reform, how to look into the future, but at the same time, we also need to be able to say that it is not our collective responsibility that Russia has attacked another country.
Indeed. Minister Sabiha, you've journeyed here from Kyiv. You've obviously heard your president, Mr. Zelensky, address us earlier. Just a more general thought. We obviously, everybody in this room is mindful throughout the conversation of what is happening in your country today, but this debate has to be much broader than that. So I want you to be as broad as you can be. Coming from Kyiv, but surveying Europe and the wider world, what is your perspective on the current state of respect for the principles that underpin the Helsinki Final Act?
Ukrainian people, Ukrainians now are paying the highest price to protect these values, to protect Helsinki principles. We heard 20 minutes ago speech of my president. Unfortunately, President, we must start every speech with the words, today Kyiv was under the attack. Today Ukraine was heavily attacked. Today we have casualties. Today several or many civilians, children were killed. What does it mean? It also means that OSCE failed, even failed in providing, in keeping its mission, which was established 50 years ago. That's also, by the way, the response, Putin's response, and the way he celebrates 50 years of Helsinki Act by heavy bombing Ukraine. And every morning you start by calling to your relatives and families, are you okay? And what is also very symbolic, at the beginning of this week, Moscow mechanism was invoked to help to investigate Moscow crimes against war prisoners. So it's difficult even to imagine Moscow mechanism to help to investigate Moscow crimes. It means degradation of this country, and of course degradation of security in Europe.
I want to stop you there and just very briefly ask you this. The OSCE is not an enforcement organization. You know, it's not NATO, and it never will be, and it never was intended to be. But it was intended to enshrine values and principles which could reach out people to people. And as we just heard from Federico, talking from the perspective of Human Rights Watch, there is no question that the ideas behind Helsinki reached people beyond the Iron Curtain in that period before 1989, and they did make a difference. Do you believe that the Helsinki principles still matter in that people-to-people sense, and that they reach people? Let's be specific. Do they reach people in the Belarus of today, the Russia of today? Do they still matter to people?